Good day, everyone. It's wonderful to be back in the webinar hot seat once again. And yeah, on that note, I'd also like to extend warm greetings to all of you from Nikki, Nigel, and I. Yeah, we have a fantastic webinar coming up shortly, which, as all of you know, is featuring two of really the absolute best countries for birding in Scandinavia. That's Finland and Norway. And the Scandinavia region is particularly well known for its owls and woodpeckers and some fabulous thrushes and a lot of great families. A huge variety of grouse as well also present, including the spectacular Western Capercaillie, which should be right in front of your faces there at the moment as the intro slide. And yeah, these countries are also extremely well organized. So ease of travel, logistics, they're rather straightforward and comfortable. But yeah, the timing of a trip to Scandinavia is also extremely important. And there's definitely just a small window when the birding, the daylight hours, the insect numbers, they all just line up best. And to take us to this region and answer not only this question, but numerous others is popular Rockjumper tour leader Nigel Redman. Nigel needs little introduction, being a rather familiar face now on our Dream Destination webinar series over the past 18 months. We do, however, still have a few people who are joining us who are new to our webinar series or have only attended a handful of webinars. For those of you who don't know Nigel, he's one of the world's most traveled tour leaders. He's guided birding tours across the planet. And Nigel typically leads tours for Rockjumper through Europe, Africa, and Asia, but you'll often find him on polar expedition cruises as well during December to February. And a particular favorite of his is Antarctica, where he's traveled extensively over the past decade. So yeah, extremely well-traveled tour leader, Nigel. And yeah, he'll certainly be entertaining us in a big way shortly. And then finally, as always, we'll have a Q&A session with Nigel at the end of the webinar, which Nikki will facilitate. And yeah, if you do have a question or you just want to say hi, you can do so in the chat or the Q&A box. And on that note, we're going to head straight into the webinar, and I'd like to hand over to Nigel. Enjoy the presentation, everyone.
Thanks very much, Keith, for that very lovely introduction. So today I'm going to be talking to you about somewhere that's a bit closer to home than I usually talk about, Finland and Norway. Pretty close for me, living here in Norfolk in England. But Finland and Norway are in Scandinavia, or the northern part of Europe, and it really does showcase northern European birding at its best. So I'm going to talk to you about both Finland and Norway, and this is really the two main places that we visit on our tour, our Finland and Norway. It's a 13-day tour that we've been operating now for a few years, and it's really got the cream of northern European birding. This is a map that shows you Scandinavia, or actually more correctly, it's actually Fennoscandia, because Scandinavia is actually Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. But Fennoscandia is Scandinavia plus Finland. So that is what it should be more correctly called. So on this map, you will see at the bottom of Finland is Helsinki, which is the capital, and almost everybody would fly directly into Helsinki. But we don't hang around in Helsinki, and we fly straight up north to Oulu. And Oulu lies at the head of the Gulf of Bothnia, up in northwestern part of Finland. And that is where the tour begins. But Finland is known as the land of 1,000 lakes. In actual fact, it's got 188,000 lakes, so it's got quite a lot of lakes. But it's also got forest. It's got Taiga forest, which is forest of conifers, spruces, and pines, and also birches. And then up in the far north, you get into the tundra. So you experience the full range here. And the great attraction of this tour really is that when you get up into northern Norway, up into the Varanger Fjord area, which is right up here up in the north, it is true Arctic tundra, and it's the most accessible part of the Arctic that you can get to. Along the way, it's also a very comfortable way of getting to the Arctic because of good roads and accommodation. You can travel from Taiga into tundra in the matter of a few hours. On the way, we cross the Arctic Circle, which is here, And when we're up here, up in Varanger, we're up at about 70 degrees north, but more of that later. So moving on. So what are the highlights? What are the reasons for going to Northern Europe? It's a relatively small bird list. A 13-day tour can expect to see about 180 species. So it's not a big bird list, but some good specialities. And these include 5 species of grouse. And grouse are always good to see anywhere. And these include the Western Capercaillie and the hazel grouse. I'll show you pictures of all of these. At least 6 species of owls, which we see by day, often at their nest sites. Or most of the boreal forest passerine specialities, which include Siberian jay, waxwing, Siberian tit, red-flanked bluetail, pine grosbeak, parrot crossbill, and little and rustic buntings. We cross the Arctic Circle. We get the full Arctic experience. We go get tundra specialities, which include many ducks and waders and divers, jaegers, and many other good species. You can read them there, and we'll see photographs of them shortly. And then finally, spectacular seabird colonies with 5 species of auks. And that is one of the real highlights of Northern Hemisphere birding, is seeing vast colonies of auks on their breeding cliffs. And there are also chances of snowy owl and Gyr Falcon on this tour. Difficult Arctic species, but they are gettable in Arctic Norway with a bit of luck. I should also say, of course, that this area of northern Finland and northern Norway is also known as Lapland, of course. But there we go. So this shows where we start the tour. We start the tour at Oulu, up here on the north of the Gulf of Bothnia. We drive across over to Kuusamo, and Kuusamo is close to the Russian, fairly close to the Russian border, so we bird around this area as well. Then we head up north to Ivalo. We spend only just one night at Ivalo on our way north, and as we head up north that way, we gradually see the great Taiga forest, the forest getting smaller and smaller in height as we get further north, and the trees become more stunted, and then until you get right up to the Varanger Fjord, which is this little bit up here, where the trees disappear altogether, and you get the true Arctic tundra. So when you start at Oulu, there's forest all around Oulu, and also open areas as well. And the bird that you hear more than any other in the forest up there is the willow warbler. Willow warbler is probably the commonest bird. You hear their song in May or June, which is when we go. You hear their song all the time, every day. It is one of the birds that we see every single day of the tour, even in the far north. So willow warbler, it's a true long-distance migrant, the willow warbler. It breeds up in these high latitudes and winters down in southern Africa, so massive migration. And even birds that breed up in northeastern Siberia, they have recently discovered, also winter in Africa. So they have an even more magnificent migration route, which they don't obviously do it in one hop. They do it in stages, but it is one of the world's long distance migrants. Another common bird of the forest is pied flycatcher, European pied flycatcher. And these are pretty common in the forest areas of central northern Finland where we'll be visiting. We run out of those as you head further north. This is a female, which is just brown, mainly brown and with black and white. The males are completely black and white and very smart indeed. Thrushes, Keith mentioned thrushes. Well, the common breeding thrushes are fieldfare, which is this one here, actually photographed in Oulu, and also redwing, which further south, like for us here in Britain, fieldfare and redwing are just winter visitors. But up in Finland, they breed, and they're quite common breeding birds. And of course, because of the long daylight hours, they sing all through the night even. On top of that, you get the common other common thrushes like song thrush and mistle thrush and blackbird as well, of course. So this is a redwing. This one actually wasn't. This was taken in winter in Britain rather than up in Finland, but they look the same all the year round. Another bird that we can get round Oulu, but not really any further north than that, is common rose finch. This is a spectacular little bird. The females are just brown. They have an east sort of west migration. They all head eastwards after breeding, and here at Oulu they are very much at the western end of their breeding range. You don't get them much further east, much further west than this. And then around Oulu there is the Liminka Bay, is one of the most famous birding sites in Finland. It's a marvelous area of wetland, and it's got a fantastic visitor center with a museum, and it's got this fantastic observation platform, which is shown here from taken from the air, with a boardwalk leading to it. And this gives a great view of this magnificent wetland, and we'll spend some time here. Hooper swans, you can sometimes see several hundred hooper swans here. You get a great variety of ducks as well, and also waders around the edge, and also a few passerines. So it's a magnificent area at Liminka Bay. Goldeneye is one of the more frequently seen ducks. All the sort of common European species are present there, including a few pairs of gargany, which are of course just summer visitors. But goldeneye is one of the common and fairly special ducks. It's a beautiful duck, and you can see it on lakes pretty much throughout Finland and even up in the far north. This is a male. Cranes, common cranes. Common cranes are quite widespread and common over Finland. They're increasing up in Northern Europe, and consequently on their migration and wintering grounds in France and Spain, the numbers have increased dramatically in recent decades. And any good extensive bit of bog in Finland probably has at least one pair of common cranes, if not several. I found it hard to get pictures of them on their breeding grounds, but this is a little family group taken on their wintering grounds in India. But common crane is a species that we can expect to see frequently on our visits in Finland. Also in the Oulu area, we look for our first grouse species, black grouse. This is a species that leks. So if you see these, you might see 10 or a dozen males lekking in an open area adjacent to a bit of forest, hoping to attract a female. And we'll be on the lookout to find some black grouse around Oulu or even around Kuusamo. Common cuckoo is a widespread species, and they could be expected to be seen pretty much anywhere on the tour, even up in the far north. But these birds, they're not really, their breeding grounds shouldn't really be considered Europe at all, because a bird like this will probably only spend barely 2 months up in its breeding habitat, and after it's mated and laid eggs, they will be off back south down to Africa. So a remarkable bird, and nearly all of them winter in Central Africa. They have now discovered from transmitter work. Raptors, well, you might get the odd hen harrier up in this central northern parts of Finland, but recently pallid harriers have been found to breed, and there's a few pairs of pallid harriers are breeding. It's a harrier that's been extending its range westwards in recent decades, and we have seen that. We usually do manage to find one or two on the tour, pallid harrier. This of course is a male. And another special bird to get around Oulu is Terik sandpiper. This photograph wasn't taken on its at Oulu, but Terik sandpipers, there's 1 or 2 pairs breed around Oulu, and that also is at the extreme western edge of its breeding range. You cannot find them any further west than Oulu. It's a little isolated population, but a fabulous way, the Terik sandpiper with its upturned bill. So much of Finland looks like this. It's forest and lakes, taiga forest and lakes, and lots of it. The forest has different ages. Some of it is selectively logged, so you get young areas of forest, but older areas are generally better. So it's, and as I said before, 188,000 lakes, so an awful lot of habitat to look at. But terrific and well worth the effort. So in the taiga forest and in the wetlands and the bogs, Taiga bean goose is a bird that breeds widely in Finland. This is a photograph taken a little later in the season when you've got some almost fully grown youngsters and they're forming these loose flocks prior to migrating. But at the time of year that we'll be there, we'll probably just see them in pairs where they're at the beginning of their breeding cycle. So Taiga bean goose. You can also get the Tundra bean goose as well. Tundra bean goose is a split. Formerly there were four subspecies, which have now been split into two species. So the Tundra bean goose breeds, as its name implies, breeds further north up in the tundra zone. And in Finland, they will just be migrants that we see on their way back to their breeding grounds. Little gulls are gorgeous, probably one of my favorite gulls for sure. I was going to say my favorite, but Ross's gull surely has to be better. But little gull is a terrific species of gull, and they breed in colonies and not uncommonly in Finland, and sometimes quite close to the roadsides. And they're absolute delight to watch when they're in their full breeding plumage. They're fully black hoods. They're very small. They've got a very lovely fluttery light flight, and of course the underwing you can see there on the flight bird is very dark, and that's a crucial feature with no black in the wingtips as well. So little gulls are a real delight and one of the highlights of the tour for me. Grebes are always popular, and Slavonian grebe, or horned grebe if you're in North America, is a very special and spectacular species of grebe in summer plumage. Here in Britain, we're used to seeing them mostly in winter plumage, where they're just black and white. But there are one or two places where we can look for these, and they like small lakes within forested areas, but they prefer much smaller lakes rather than big ones. But one of the other species of grebe is this one. This is a redneck grebe. That's the second largest grebe in Europe after the great crested, and this likes bigger lakes, perhaps not surprisingly. And again, this is also only black and white in its winter plumage, but it looks very spectacular when they're breeding. And there are many species of ducks, as I mentioned before, but none surely is finer than a smew, the male smew at least anyway. And we can expect to see a few of these on our travels, both males and females. They're not super common, but they're around widely in small numbers. The females, of course, are known as redheads, and they are largely reddish brown and white. But the male is truly spectacular. Waders as well in these vast areas of bogs and open country. Well, many different kinds of waders, and perhaps one of the most typical ones is wood sandpiper. This is a bird. This is a juvenile bird actually taken on its wintering grounds, but this is a bird that you see quite frequently up in the taiga forest, and they'll be perching on trees and singing from tops of trees or from posts. But this one is enjoying its winter break. Ruffs. Now, ruffs are wonderful birds, a common and widespread species, often seen in big flocks, very familiar to anyone who's birded in Eurasia. But in the breeding plumage, the male ruffs, they are spectacular, and it's rarely seen. Ruffs are very common here in Britain. I saw one yesterday when I went out, but you very rarely see them in their full breeding plumage, and male ruffs are spectacular. No two ruffs are the same. Every one is different, and this is a couple more different looking ones, and they have these fantastic variations in colors and types of plumes, and they get together in good numbers sometimes, where they all display and they prance around and they try to attract females. And ruffs are common. We see them on the tour. We see them displaying pretty much every day on the tour, and it is one of the highlights. On one trip, it actually got voted the second most favorite bird of the tour They're that impressive. Still sticking with waders, and I'm going to concentrate on one waders that are less easy to see and a bit more special for this particular tour. Jacksnipe. Jacksnipe is the smallest member of the snipe family. It's got a shorter bill. It's generally a bit darker. It's unusual in that it has absolutely no sexual dimorphism, and even juveniles are pretty much identical to adults. It's not easy to see well, and it's quite likely that we might only see one in flight like this as it's flying around our heads. It is a bird that we usually do connect with. So jacksnipe is a furtive species. It's quite a hard bird to see even on its wintering grounds here in winters here in Britain, but it's not an easy one to see, unlike the common snipe. And another real speciality, and if you see one this well, you're doing really, really well, is broad-billed sandpiper. These breed throughout these parts of Finland. Seeing them can be difficult, but we usually do manage to find one or two pairs of broad-billed sandpipers. And they've got this sort of double supercilium, which this photograph shows very, very well. This double supercilium, and the bill has got this kink at the tip. That's also another feature of broad-billed sandpiper, and these ones, of course, are in their full breeding plumage. And the forests it's not just spruces and pines. You get a lot of birches, and you get many rivers, and these fast-flowing streams like this that running through the Taiga forest are a good place to look for dippers, white-throated dipper, and that is. It's a widespread species, but it's always a nice one to see. This one has got managed to catch a fantastic stonefly larva, which it was feeding its young, and it was just nesting in under a bridge. In fact, this one. So that's white-throated dipper. But birch, although there's lots and lots of birches, spruces are really perhaps probably the most familiar tree of this area, or pines as well, of course. And this is habitat for red-flanked bluetail. Red-flanked bluetail, that's one of the really special birds. It used to be very rare in Finland, if not barely breeding at all. But this is a bird that's been expanding westwards. It's increasing its range westwards. Last year they counted a record number of singing males just in Finland, which is magnificent. It got up to about 700, and this year it was even more. I heard that it was about 840 or 860, I think, breeding males in Finland, which is extraordinary. It's a fantastic increase, and of course, consequently, we're picking them up here in autumn. A few migrants that drift westwards to Britain, and they've become an annual vagrant now in Britain, having before been an extreme vagrant, almost unknown in Britain about 40, 50 years ago. So red-flanked bluetail, this is a nice, magnificent male. The females are brown, but they all have the orange on the flanks. And when you're in the birding in the forest and you've had a hard morning, it's always nice to go to a little restaurant in the forest like this, a little cafe in the forest where you can relax and have a great meal. And the other good thing is that they often put up bird feeders for you to see them and to see the birds more easily. And that's one of the most easiest ways of seeing this bird. This is a Siberian tit. It's called a grey-headed chickadee in North America. It's the same species, but I think it's quite hard to get in North America. And it's not that easy a species to see in Finland. They do nest in nest boxes, and sometimes we can go along and have a look at one in a nest box. But also, if you've got feeders up, they might come to your feeder, like this one did. And so this is what we call Siberian tit, or grey-headed chickadee, one of the boreal specialities of the tour. Other good birds that you might see at the feeders, well, the common redpoll, that's a widespread common species. We have those in Britain. That's a lovely male, a very nice pink male, and a terrific looking bird on the left. But even more special is, or much more special, is the pine grosbeak. It's a widespread boreal species, but it's patchy. It's not especially common in the forest, and there's an awful lot of forest to look through. So if you can find them at a feeding station like this, it's much the best way, and you can get some great photographs of these birds. So this is a male. The females are sort of an orangey yellow color. Bullfinch, Eurasian bullfinch, another spectacular finch. The ones up in Scandinavia, or Fennoscandia, are pinker than the ones we have in Europe or here in Britain, and are a purer grey above as well, and bigger build. Another common finch of the Taiga forest is brambling. This is a male brambling. So we see a few of these, and again they come into feeders regularly. Brambling is closely related to the chaffinch. A variety of tits, mostly the common species. You get blue tits and grey tits and marsh tits and even willow tits, but crested tit is a good one to look for. And this we can expect to find a few of these. This is a lovely photograph of one taken in Sweden. And mammals, not so much in the way of mammals in this part of the world, but red squirrels are a familiar sight in Finland, in these forest areas. The Eurasian red squirrel with its lovely long ear tufts. Crossbills. Now, there's 3 species of crossbills in the forests up here. They're not always easy to see. They're often in flocks like this. These are common crossbills. It's a flock of common crossbills, but you also get parrot crossbills, and also, but the hard one to see is the 2-barred crossbill, or white-winged crossbill, as it's known in North America. So this is a common crossbill, and they're really identified on their size of the bill. So this shows quite clearly that obviously the crossed mandibles, but quite clearly shows the bill it's heavy, but it's not super heavy. Parrot crossbill has a much heavier bill. Now this bird is interesting because it actually looks a bit like a parrot crossbill. It's got a pretty heavy bill, but in fact it's common crossbill. And what you can't quite see on this photograph is actually just underneath the lower mandible there's a great big drop of water, because it's just been drinking, that's just hanging off the bill, which makes the bill look bigger than it actually is. But parrot crossbills are quite seeable. We usually see both on the trip. Another special bird is the waxwing, Bohemian waxwing, and these will be found somewhere. You probably see these several times, often in small flocks. But waxwing, and it has a beautiful tinkling song. So we'll be looking hard for Bohemian waxwings. And another boreal speciality is the Siberian jay. It's not super common, but we'll run into it somewhere along the line. This is another photo of Siberian jay. It occurs from Scandinavia eastwards quite widely across the boreal zone, and it's much smaller than the Eurasian jay. Woodpeckers, several species of woodpecker. The biggest, of course, is the black woodpecker. This is the largest European species of woodpecker, and if we locate find some big mature conifers, then maybe there'll be a nest site of a black woodpecker, like this one here. And the other special woodpecker is three-toed. It's a harder bird to find. It's quite small. It's relatively unobtrusive. It tends to like dead wood, dead trees like this, and you need a little bit of luck, but they're around as well. So three-toed woodpecker is a great bird to get. So moving on to owls. Everybody wants to see the owls, and there are a number of species which we can expect to see on this trip. So Eurasian pygmy owl, this is the smallest of the European owls. It's a delightful little bird. So, and that's a shot of a different individual showing its upper parts. It's a Glaucidium. There are lots of species of pygmy owl around the world, and it's a bird that can be seen quite readily during the day. It's not strictly nocturnal like a good many owls are. So that's the smallest. Another fairly small one is this. We call this Tengmalm's owl in Europe, but it's also found in North America, where it's called the boreal owl. And this bird particularly likes nest boxes. So this bird is actually in a nest box, but it's a nest box that's been made out of a chunk of silver birch tree trunk. This one's been made this one's nesting in a more conventional nest box, a different pair. And this is a typical view of a Tengmalm's owl, because they are pretty strictly nocturnal, but they will poke their heads out to have a look to see who's around during the day. A bird, and one of the owls that's actually quite readily seen during the day is this. This is northern hawk owl. Again, it's quite a widespread species, and we can expect to find this perhaps several times. In fact, obviously it's easier to find at a nest site, but it is one of these. It's one of the owls that you can actually just sometimes spot from the car. We've done that several times. You're just driving along, and they like to perch up quite high in a tree or on a post during the daytime. And they occur quite far north too. So this is a youngster, a northern hawk owl. This was one of a brood of 6. They go in for quite big broods. That's not even a record number. So these were actually reared in a nest box, and there were 3 had fledged already, of which this was one, and then there were 3 more the same size as this, still in the nest box. So it must have been pretty crowded in there. And we saw the parents as well at the same time. So that was a good sight. Getting bigger and bigger. This is a Ural owl. Ural owl is a spectacular species, and we will spend time to look for these. It's two different individuals seen on different tours, but a beautiful owl. Much larger than the familiar tawny owl that we get. And really the biggest of the lot, although most of it is feathers. It's a very, I think if you saw a skull or a skeleton of a great grey owl without its feathers, it would look quite small. But it's a big fluffy bird. And a great grey owl is absolutely magnificent. My favourite for sure. This one is just lying in its nest with its head sticking out. There was another bird flying around, presumably the male, and this is the female. But often the male is harder to see. So this is perhaps a typical view of a great grey owl on its nest. And just to give for good measure, I've thrown in a fantastic photograph taken by a professional photographer friend who lives down the road. And he took this in Finland a few years ago in winter. Fantastic photograph of a great grey owl. And Kusamo, I mentioned, is the second place we go to, is fairly close to the Russian border. So we go right up to the Russian border. This is as far as you're allowed to go in eastern Finland. In fact, we've gone slightly further than the border zone sign there. And in this area, it's a good area, not very well inhabited by people. It's a good area to look for a number of specialities, such as this. This is a little bunting. It's one of the specialities, really. It's one of it is the smallest of the buntings, I think. And it too, like many of these other birds, migrates east in winter after it's finished breeding. It's tolerably common in Finland, but it's always a good species to get. And then the other good bunting to look for is this. This is rustic bunting. It's been declining in recent years. Again, it's a bird that's got quite a wide breeding range, and here it's at the western end of its breeding range, and they too migrate a long way east to winter in South China, Southeast, even Southeast Asia, Southern Asia. So they have long migration routes. Arctic warbler is another bird, similar kind of thing. It's again, Finland is very much at the edge of its breeding range, the western edge of its breeding range. But sadly, this is a bird that we probably won't get. It's probably the latest to arrive, and they don't really get to Finland till early June. So it's a little bit hit and miss on our tour. Probably not likely to see it, but Arctic warbler is a breeding bird of extreme northeast Finland. So grouse, we've done the black grouse. Next up, hazel grouse. Hazel grouse is the smallest of the European grouse. It's still a good-sized bird. This is a male, and we'll make some special efforts to try to see this bird. It likes the spruce forests, the quite dense spruce forests. Often, just like most grouse, often see it on the ground, but this one does readily perch up in trees too, of course. Fabulous photo from Adam. And the big one, Capercaillie, or Western Capercaillie, because there is a black-billed Capercaillie further east. But the Capercaillie is one of the classic birds to see in Finland. It's an absolute beauty. It's huge, absolutely huge, sort of almost turkey-sized, really, and they can potentially be quite dangerous. They have been known to chase people and will attack people even. But if you sort of approach them quietly, you can actually watch them, like this one displaying. This was not far away. It was in the rain early in the morning, but they are spectacular to watch when they're displaying. And this is one that was actually chasing our guide, and she was running quite seriously. She actually showed me a wound that she had suffered from a previous encounter with a Capercaillie. So they really can attack. So this one was she was in full flight, and the Capercaillie was meant business. Raptors. Well, apart from harriers and the odd sparrowhawk or goshawk or so, the rough-legged buzzard is the common raptor, the most common raptor that we see. It gets commoner the further north you get, even up into the tundra zone. But that is the most frequently seen raptor. There's a terrific photograph of one taken on a tour a couple of years ago. So rough-legged buzzard. Golden eagle, much less likely to see one of those, but they're around. They breed them. You might see one or two on a tour, probably in flight rather than perched like this. But golden eagle is a species that occurs pretty much throughout the places that we go to. On the mammal front, this is a mountain hare, very smart hare. In winter, it turns all white, but it's a spectacular looking species. And this is the European elk, Eurasian elk, also known as a moose in North America. This is a female. She had a calf nearby. You don't often see the males with the antlers. They're rather shyer, and even the females are fairly shy. But we'll probably see a few of these on the edge of the forest as we're driving around. So Eurasian elk. And then reindeer. Well, these you see these all the way through as you drive further north in Finland. But reindeer they're not truly wild. They're all sort of owned by somebody, but I suppose they're kind of feral, really. But small flocks, small groups of these are seen frequently throughout the tour. I mentioned about crossing the Arctic Circle. Now, the Arctic Circle is a bit of a movable feast. It's not exactly the same place, although this sign seems to indicate that it is. It's at approximately 66.5 degrees north. So that is really defined as, if you're north of that line, then you get at least one day of darkness, of the sun not ever setting in summer or not rising in winter. So at least one day, and that is what defines the Arctic Circle. So we crossed the Arctic Circle. The cafe was closed, but we stopped for a photograph anyway. And as we went further north, we actually did a twitch on the last trip I did. We had a rosy starling, or rose-coloured starling. Now this is a bird that you should be expected to see in Central Asia, but this one had decided to make it to fly westwards and north to the Arctic Circle. So I don't know how he was enjoying his time there, but it made for a good twitch. Rosy starling in Finland. So leaving Finland now, we've Kuusamo, we've headed north. The taiga forest gets smaller and smaller until the trees run out altogether and you get to Varanger. And so this is the Varanger Peninsula here. And this is a bigger map of the Varanger Peninsula. And so you come to it through this way and you get to Tana. First of all, we're going to go up here towards Batsfjord. Batsfjord is it's just a little place up on the northern part of Varanger. But this area here, we're crossing the high tundra zone here. And it's a pretty bleak area. And then after that, we'll come back and we'll go across the southern edge. This is the main birding route along the southern edge of the Varanger Peninsula. You stop at places like Nessaby, stop at Vadso, that's the biggest place on the Varanger Peninsula. Eckerøy with its seabird colonies. And up to Vardø. Vardø is the other main place really in the Varanger Peninsula, and Hornøya Island, which is just here, is also famous for its fantastic seabird colonies. And then we go up to sort of Hamningberg up here, just for a few other extra species. Now you'd have thought that we could have gone to Batsfjord and gone all the way around the coast to Hamningberg, but there is no road on this bit here. It's truly inaccessible, and I can't imagine they would ever build a road. So we have to go up to here and then go here and then go back all the way around to get to here, which is it's fun, but it's got the roads are at least good condition, so it's not a problem. So the high tundra, no more trees, can be very bleak even in summer. Marvelous habitats. Up on the higher areas, you get Eurasian golden plovers, you get Arctic redpolls, which is a much paler, whiter version of redpoll. If you remember the photograph of the common redpoll earlier, very much whiter, got nice white rumps. And dotterel, Eurasian dotterel, always a popular bird to see. This is a male, which is the drabber. It's one of the few birds where the females are more brightly coloured than the males. So that's a male, and that's a female in all her finery. And they breed on these high fells, the quite high slopes, flat tops, I mean, of the tundra. And an interesting thing about these things, the females, for example, in Scotland, they breed a few of them breed in Scotland, and they've recently discovered that that some of the females will arrive in Scotland. They'll mate with the males. They'll lay some eggs, and then they leave the males to bring up the eggs, and then they fly on from Scotland up to Scandinavia, where they'll find another mate and lay some more eggs. That's only fairly recently discovered, which is quite extraordinary. A proportion of the birds will do this. So back to grouse. The last two species of grouse, willow ptarmigan. Willow ptarmigan is considered by some to be the same species as the red grouse in Britain, but the red grouse has the same plumage all the year. The willow grouse looks like this in summer, but in winter it becomes all white, pure white. And this is the rock ptarmigan, and it too becomes all white in winter, and actually looks very similar to the willow ptarmigan in winter, the males. If you look at this bird here, it's got a very small bill. And if you go back to this one here, it's got a bigger bill. I know that's a bit closer, but it's got a bigger bill. And also the rock ptarmigan has black laws as well, the male rock ptarmigan in winter in the white bird. And generally they almost overlap. The rock ptarmigan does tend to be at higher altitudes in more rugged terrain, whereas the willow prefers much more ground vegetation and places where it can hide, like sort of low growing plants and shrubs. Skewers or Jaegers, 3 species possible on this trip. Arctic is the commonest one, and they come in light morphs and dark morphs. This one is a light morph. But you also get the fabulous long-tailed skewers, and they breed up on the high fells. This is a beautiful adult. They don't come in dark morphs, they only come in pale. So this is a beautiful adult, and then this is another one perched on a rock. So long-tailed skewer is the second species, and the third species is Pomerine. We probably will see that. It doesn't breed in Varanger, but it passes through on its way to its breeding grounds further north and east. Shorelarks or horned larks. This is a female because the males have quite long horns on the back of the head, but this is a female. They like these tundra zones, we might see those, and also snow bunting, which is actually the most northerly breeding passerine in the world. These, when you get even further north to somewhere like Spitsbergen, snow bunting is the only passerine that you'll see. So these are very hardy little birds. This is a male. And another northern bunting is the Lapland bunting or Lapland longspur. Also, they breed on the Varanger Peninsula, and this is a female. And northern wheatear is another bird that we'll see a few, probably see every day up in Varanger. It's the most northerly breeding species of wheatear in the world. Red-throated pipit, another passerine speciality of the north of Varanger area. Its red throat's a little bit shaded in this photograph, but it's a nice, a delightful pipit and quite a distinctive one with a fairly dark back as well. So red-throated pipit. Thrushes, you can still see fieldfares and redwings even in the tundra zone of Varanger. But ringoozle is the speciality when you get up there. So this is a ringoozle, and we'll be looking out for these when we're up there. And another passerine of the far north that also likes these tundra zones north of the forest is the blue throat. It's fairly widespread, and it comes in several different subspecies. This one is a red spotted. You can just see a little bit of red on a spot of red on the throat there. So this is red spotted blue throat, or just blue throat. On the way to Batsfjord, as I say, the road climbs up over the fells. It gets quite high and it gets quite bleak. Even in summer, even in early June, it can snow and it can look like that. That was just recently fallen snow. And it's a bleak place to live, but there is one special bird to look out for in these sort of habitats, and that's this. This is a snowy owl. This was taken on our 2018 tour, a male snowy owl. They breed every year up in Varanger, but the problem is that Varanger is very inaccessible. There's a lot of tundra, and there's only a couple of roads that go through it. So you really have to hope that there's a pair breeding close to one of those roads. And if there is, you've got a chance of seeing one. And if there isn't, then you haven't got any chance. So it's a bit hit and miss, but we do see them sometimes, and it's a bird worth looking for. And that's just another nice shot of a female snowy owl. So just looking at that map again, we've done Batsfjord. This is the snowy owl area up here, or the most accessible area to see snowy owls. So we'll come back and we're going to just do the southern coastal route now to Vardø. So good roads go all the way around the peninsula. This is the kittiwake colony at Eckerøy. It's a fantastic experience, a kittiwake colony. It's very noisy. There are birds everywhere, and they're beautiful gulls as well. Very spectacular things. So there's a pair of kittiwakes. These are, strictly speaking, black-legged kittiwakes, because there is a red-legged version up in Alaska. which is very hard to see. So here's black-legged kittiwake again. Nice, smart adult. It's a truly pelagic gull. Now, this is a bird hide. There are a number of these bird hides around the Varanger Peninsula, and they were built by a company called Biotope. Biotope is an architectural practice. A couple of birders decided to set up an architectural practice in Vardo, which is an interesting thing to do, because Vardo is a bit of a sleepy little outpost whose population had been diminishing a lot over the years. But they were determined to make Varanger famous as a birding center, to attract bird watchers to go there. And they've been very successful. They built these hides. I think there are at least 15 of them around, maybe more. They're quite peculiar. They're strange angles. They're not necessarily flat. I mean, as you can see from the photograph, that is actually uphill. But they look amazing, and they're very welcome, because in these windswept landscapes of the tundra of Varanger, it can be quite cold and windy, and it's great to have somewhere where you can actually get a little bit of shelter. And they're usually well sited over some good bit of habitat. So it's a Biotope hide. They've even got a hotel now, a birders hotel. This is at Vadso. So this is the birders base camp. But our hotel at Vardo is situated by just on the harbour. This is a view from the back of the hotel over the harbour at Vardo. So don't forget, we're at 70 degrees north here. This is quite far north. If any of you have ever been down to Antarctica, when you go down to the Antarctic Peninsula, you rarely will get any further than 63 degrees south. And so we are 70 degrees north here. So in summer, when we're there in sort of June, it's daylight pretty much all through the night. It certainly doesn't get very dark even in the middle of the night. And this is a photograph taken at night over the same harbour, just a slightly different angle in Vardo. The food's great up there. We have the restaurant and the hotel in Vardo is famous for its fish, and this is the chef. He's a fantastic Norwegian chef from Oslo who is up in Vardo, or was up in Vardo, and he showed us his tattoo. Cod is great, which amused us all, and he certainly knew how to cook it. So the birds, well, in the harbour you get the usual things like European herring gull, you get great black-backed gull, familiar European species for all of us. You also get glaucous gull. A few of these are present all the year round. They don't breed up in Varanger, but they winter in very large numbers, and a few of them stay all year round, like this one did. So we can expect to see one or two, and we might even see an Iceland gull, but they're much less common than the glaucus. Arctic terns, they're pretty common up in this part of the world. Where further south we will have seen common terns, but up in the Varanger area it's Arctic terns without a black tip to the bill. So they're pretty frequent. Ducks, well, it's good for ducks up in Varanger. Common eider is one of the it's the commonest species, goes around in big flocks. They breed, of course, up there, but you see them in very big flocks. But it's worth looking through flocks of common eiders for something rarer. And this is a king eider. Now, king eider is one of the specialities of this region. There are quite a lot in winter, but in summer, most of them go. They don't breed in Varanger, but often there's one or two hanging around into May or even into early June. So the chances of finding a king eider are fairly good, but we have to scan a few eider flocks in order to see one. And there's another pair of king eiders, truly spectacular species of duck. There is another eider that's a bit of a speciality up there. That's this one, Steller's eider. But we need a lot of luck to see one of those. They winter in Varanger, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 or something, several thousand winter there. And they're easy to see in winter. They don't breed up there, and they all head off back up east to breed, and they the last ones usually stay there till around about mid-May, but it's not impossible, but we will look hard for them, and sometimes we see them, but sometimes we don't. But Stella's eider is a speciality. It is actually Biotope, the company that's promoting birdwatching in Varanger. They use the Stella's eider as their logo, their symbol for promoting Varanger. Waders, good. Tundra is always a good place for waders. Here we've got Dunlin in summer plumage with its black belly, a common European species. Always a delight to see when they're looking like this. And rather a lot more special really is the Temminck stint. It's not a very common wader in Western Europe, but quite a few pairs breed up in northern Scandinavia, or up in northern Norway, in Varanger. And this is a lovely photo of one, and we'll likely find a few pairs of these on the Tundra, and they're quite often seen displaying and doing their song flights like this. Another breeding wader up there is purple sandpiper. It's not very purple, I know, but it's not even very spectacular in its breeding plumage. This is as good as it gets in breeding plumage, and it's a little bit drabber than that in winter. But it's a purple sandpiper. This one's got a bit of a muddy bill. This one's also got a muddy bill. Bar-tailed godwit. Bar-tailed godwit is not a breeding bird of Varanger, but it's a passage bird, and they're on their way up further north to breed on tundra further east. But it makes spectacular long migrations, and I expect most of you have heard about the migrations that bar-tailed godwits make from Alaska down to New Zealand when they fly 11,500 kilometers in 8 days non-stop. Well, this one is one that will have gone to Africa, so taken the western route, so it will have come from it will have come from its wintering grounds in Africa, or possibly even around Britain, and it will be on its way to its Russian breeding grounds on the tundra. So this one is a male. It's very nice brick red plumage, and this one a little less bright is a female. Bar-tailed godwits. And another non-breeding wader that we see up here is these. These are red knots, and these are pretty much coming into summer plumage. They're nice bright summer plumage. They're just grey and white in winter. So these are very smart on their way through. But a breeding bird of Varanger and even further south is the delightful redneck phalarope. That's another species where the female is brighter than the male. This is a female. But redneck phalarope, we will see a few of these on little pools and locks in the tundra zone mainly. Redneck phalarope. Still going back to the ducks, velvet scoters. There's a few pairs of those breed up there. Very smart, largely sea duck. Also goosanders. See big flocks of goosanders. I don't know why they're in such big flocks even in the breeding season in May, June when we're up there. Sometimes hundreds and hundreds of them in flocks. This is two females, and that's a male in flight. And you get red-breasted mergansers as well. Not as many, but they occur in flocks up there too. But my favorite of all the ducks, I think, really is the long-tailed duck. I love long-tailed ducks, and they are fairly common up there. And we'll see these in flocks in the bay and the fjords, and also maybe pairs on some of the little pools. This is a male in summer plumage. The males actually look even better in winter when they are largely grey, black and white. Are truly spectacular. They keep their long tails all the year round. But this is a male in summer plumage. And divers, I didn't mention divers until now. Red-throated divers is the most common species, and we'll see a few of these on pools, and usually in pairs at this time of year. And they're looking very smart with their lovely red throats at this time of year. And there's another shot of a red-throated diver. Notice how the bill is slightly up-tilted in this picture. Well, it always is up-tilted. It looks less so when you see an immature, but when these breeding adults always look quite distinctly up-tilted bills. And this is a black-throated diver, and you can see the bill is much straighter and a bit thicker. That's crucial when you're seeing the birds in winter plumage, but in this time of year, the stripes, the black throat and the stripes on the side of the neck and the strong pattern on the back clearly identify that as a black-throated diver. And here's a terrific shot taken by a friend, Roger Tibman, down the road, and it's a wonderful shot of black-throated diver taken in Finland. And the big speciality to look up for at Varanger is this bird. It doesn't breed in Varanger. It winters around that area, and there's always usually one or two still hanging around when we're up there, often on the sea, or usually on the sea. A white-billed diver in full summer plumage is a real sight. Offshore, northern fulmar, probably the only seabird that is of any noteworthy at all, and there's a few of those around. But the real highlight of the trip, which we'll just finish on now, is Hornoja Island near Vado. It's just a short 10-minute boat ride from Vado, which you can see over in the distance there. And this island is uninhabited, but it's just full of birds. It is a spectacular sight. It really is. Everybody needs to see one of these seabird colonies in Northern Europe. It's absolutely magnificent. So as you pull ashore, this is the sight that you're greeted with, all these thousands and thousands of auks, mainly guillemots, and lots of razorbills as well. So this is a common guillemot. This is by far the most numerous species, and here we have common guillemots again. You'll notice that some of them have got a little white stripe behind the eye and a spectacle. These are called bridled guillemots. They are known as. It's just a morph. It's not even a subspecies, or certainly not a different species. It's just a morph, because if you look at these other birds here, they've actually got a black line where the white should be. So all it is these ones have got a white line, and these ones have got a black line. You can see it on that one too. So these are all common guillemots. And here's another study of more. You can actually see the black line there and the white line there. And this is standing room only on the colony. They do like to pack themselves tightly together sometimes. And of course, it's very noisy on these colonies. But amongst all these common guillemots, there are a few Brunix guillemots, which are called thick-billed moors in North America. But we call them Brunix guillemots. And they're very similar to the common guillemot, but they've got this little white stripe on the base of the bill. That's the crucial thing there. The bill is a bit thicker. So there's a few pairs of these to look out for on the breeding cliffs. And if you're lucky, we can get one in the water there. It's also got this stripe behind the eye like the common guillemot, but look for this stripe here on the base of the bill and the thicker bill. So it's Brunix guillemot. Razorbill, much thicker bill on that one, of course. Razorbills, they don't breed in such big numbers. They tend to prefer the lower ledges, and they're not as they don't pack themselves so tightly. They're more the pairs are more spaced apart. So that's a razorbill, and there's a pair of razorbills. Fantastic, clean-looking birds. And then the last species, second to last species of auk is this. This is the black guillemot in a different genus. At this time of year, very distinctive with its white wing patch and its red legs. And of course, puffins. Well, quite a few puffins on Hornoja Island, and you can get really close to them and see them very well indeed. And they are an absolute delight. Everyone loves puffins. Atlantic puffin to be correct. And this one is collecting nesting material. European shag is a member of the cormorant family. It's more pelagic than the cormorant. It doesn't have any white on the face, and it has a little bit of a crest. And there you can see it's on the crest. Now these birds, some of them don't always obey the rules, and this one is actually nesting in the biotope hide on Hornoja Island. And here it is again. It's the same bird. It doesn't seem to mind people. There are actually two more nests in this picture, both occupied, one there and one there. So they don't realize that the hide is for people and they're supposed to be outside. But they seem to tolerate people. This is our Taru, our guide on the tour. And white-tailed eagles. White-tailed eagles are a real success story. They have increased dramatically in recent years. The first time I went to Varanger, we saw probably 5 or 6 white-tailed eagles over the course of 4 or 5 days. Now you can see up to 30 a day. They're doing really, really well up there. And you can get some great shots of them if you're prepared. This is some terrific shots of a subadult white-tailed eagle. Its tail is not fully white yet. And I'm just going to finish on this. The real bird of prey to look for up in Varanger is the Gyr Falcon. And it's a difficult bird to see. There are a few birds, a few pairs up there. Sadly, their nests are quite often robbed by people who want to collect the birds for falconry. So the locations of nest sites are closely guarded secret. But nevertheless, if you spend a bit of time looking, you can quite often, you can find them and come across them. This is a magnificent picture from Thomas. And this is a picture from a friend of mine, taken in Varanger. But it's a magnificent bird, Gyr Falcon, and that surely is one of our target birds up there. So I shall finish with a sunrise rather than a sunset, just to be different, taken in Finland at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that is it. That is basically Norway and Finland in 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very, very much, Nigel. Yeah, as always, a wonderful presentation, a wonderful overview of the habitats and the birds and what you can expect. And I guess it's what we've become accustomed to when you're presenting. Just a fantastic overview of that particular region. And yeah, I mean, you've just got so much knowledge to share. So thank you so much again. So yeah, we'll move across to our Q&A session shortly. But just before we do that, I know Nikki did put something up in the chat function as well in the chat box. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know about our fairly new GoFundMe campaign that we've started to support local guides in a few of the countries, particularly in Asia and parts of Africa, where the global pandemic still hasn't subsided and countries are still locked down. So yeah, this week again, funds will be going to Madagascar. So if you did enjoy the webinar today, please feel free to go to the page and show your support. And many thanks in advance for that. And then just an update as well, in 2 weeks' time, we're heading back to Africa. It's been a little bit of a while since we were last in Africa, September actually to be exact, when David was speaking about Morocco. But yeah, this time around, we're going to be showcasing our very popular overland tour through Namibia and the regions of Okavango in Botswana and Victoria Falls, which we view from the Zimbabwe side. And yeah, look, this region it's got spectacular scenery. It's really well known in this regard, and places like Etosha National Park are world famous. And so Rockjumper leader Greg de Klerk is going to be covering this region, and it's sure to be a really interesting presentation featuring some of the very best birds found in that area, spectacular scenery and wildlife as well. So yeah, on that note, over to you, Nikki and Nigel.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Nigel. That was absolutely beautiful. Marilyn says, wonderful presentation, Nigel. Thank you so much. Your photos are stunning. And that's from Marilyn and Barbara in Muizenberg, Cape Town. Sherry's saying, wonderful talk. Thank you. We've got Anne here saying, we toured Finland with Nigel in 2019 and had a marvelous time. He has a tour leader par experience. So some lovely comments coming in. I can't read all of them, but I'll send them through to you afterwards. So first question that we've got here is from Catherine. She's asking, what kind of temperatures can we expect in May and June, and likelihood of snow?
Okay, generally it's pretty good. In most of Finland, you can get cloudy days, but the temperatures, I'm not sure exact temperatures, but can be quite good. I mean, you could get up to, I should think, anywhere between 10 and 20. Some days are quite warm and sunny. It gets cooler when you get further north. So by the time you've got to Varanger, it's more, there's no trees up there, so it's more windswept. So it can be windier and it can be cooler, and you definitely need to wrap up a little bit better. It's not really very much chance of snow. And the only real chance is when you go up over those high fells to Batsfjord, which we do deliberately because we want to go and look for snowy owl. That's the only real chance. But we don't do much walking around. We drive across and we stop the van and we get out and we scan, and that's it really. We don't go tramping across the fells. That would be much too difficult and
absolutely. With so much daylight hours, how many hours a day are typically spent birding, and do we get time to sleep?
Oh, not much time to sleep, no. It's a difficult one, actually. And the curtains are very good on the rooms, so they do block out the light, so you can get a bit of sleep usually. It is a difficult one. Despite the fact that it's light throughout the night, even at the night, during the nighttime, the birds, most of them are not really so active. So they are still more active during the day. I know things like redwings will sing all through the night, and some things like that will. But the light is a bit duller during the night sometimes as well. So what we tend to do is we just operate a fairly normal day. We tend to get up at sort of normal sort of time in the mornings, like 6. So there'll be the odd early start to go to look for a capercaillie or something, and we'll bird through to have dinner at a normal time. But I suppose the difference is that we might go out after dinner sometimes to go and look for a couple of things. But you will get enough sleep. You don't have to be out all the time to see it all.
Oh, great. Catherine's saying mosquitoes, how bad are they, and best way to prepare?
I knew someone was going to ask about mosquitoes, and I deliberately kept off the subject because I knew it would be a Q&A. Actually, it's fine. There are not many mosquitoes as a rule when we go there. We are there at the end of May, maybe early June at the latest. And the mosquitoes don't really get bad to July, to be honest. So it's not too bad. Having said that, you can sometimes find a few, but you really don't find the big numbers. I have been later. I've been in early July, and there were some places where it was so bad that you could lift your binoculars up and you'd get 1 or 2 mosquitoes trapped in your eye cups or your binoculars. But it's just not like that in May or early June. We don't see very many at all. I mean, in fact, sometimes you see hardly any.
Oh, brilliant. Patricia's asking, do you have any information on the status of the ortolan bunting in Finland or elsewhere?
Yes, it's still there. It's still hanging on. And I was going to show it actually. I should have put a photo in. I haven't got a photo taken in Finland, but I was going to put a photo in actually. I've taken somewhere else. It's around Oulu, and we do see it. Just 1 or 2 pairs, but it is hanging on. It has decreased, but they're still around there. Yes, we should see it around Oulu.
And another question here from Patricia is, do you visit the rough lake at Liminka near Oulu? The numbers and display are spectacular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. But we do see them, and we go to Liminka and we see the ruffs there. But the ruffs are everywhere. You don't have to just see them in Liminka. You can come across them just by the roadside in many different places. They're even up in Varanger. One year we had some spectacular displaying ruffs just in a field in Varanger, in completely treeless tundra area. So we see ruffs pretty much every day. Yeah, it's a real feature of the tour to see them, and it's a treat because it's quite hard to see real breeding ruffs in many tours. You see ruffs in non-breeding plumage in many places, but breeding ones are hard to see. So yeah, we make special efforts.
Spectacular. What are the chances of white-backed woodpecker and yellow-breasted bunting?
White-backed woodpecker, no. It's down in the south. We don't do the south, so no white-backed. I'm afraid. Have to try a different tour for that. But yellow-breasted bunting, also no. But for a different and sadder reason. They used to be around Oulu, and they were like Terek sandpiper and a number of other things. They were at the extreme western edge of their range, big range, and extreme western edge of their range. But they have gone because the bird is critically endangered. This is a bird that has gone. I mentioned it in my Thailand talk. It's a bird that has gone from being super numerous to being critically endangered now because of extensive trapping in China and in Thailand on its wintering grounds. And as a consequence of that, its breeding range has contracted. It is no longer in Finland. The last breeding was 10-15 years ago, I think, in Finland. I heard of one that turned up in spring, I think 2 or 3 years ago, but they are effectively gone from Finland, sadly.
Sadly, yeah. Are divers the same as what we call loons?
Yes.
Looks like
sorry. Yes. Sorry, I should have said. Some of the photo captions, I think I put the alternative names in. They are indeed loons. Yeah. So we've got red-throated diver is red-throated loon. Black-throated diver is Arctic loon, and well, I didn't mention Great Northern because we don't usually get Great Northern, but that's the common loon in North America. And what I called white-billed diver is called yellow-billed loon in North America.
Oh, lovely. Margaret is asking again, just in the temperatures to expect, but how physical is the tours?
Oh, it's not too bad. We don't. There's not any great long walks. We tend to sort of drive somewhere and then do a short walk and then get back in the car and drive somewhere else. None of the walks are particularly tough at all. Even up on the fells when you're looking for dotterel, one of the really good sites of dotterel, you can actually drive right up to the top and don't have to walk very far. So not too much at all in the way of walking. It's a nice, easy tour. Accommodations are good, roads are good. It's a civilized way to do the Arctic and the tundra. Yeah.
Alison is asking, is it more a birding trip or more bird photography trip?
No, it's the photography is good, but it's a birding trip. It is absolutely a birding trip. There are not a high number of species, and you have to look hard for some of them. And some of the specialities are fairly low density, like sort of little buntings or rustic buntings. So you've got to put a bit of time in. But no, it's not really. I mean, I've got some great photos because I was able to tap into a few friends who were able to supply me with some great photos, which kind of made it look as if it might be a photography trip, but it's mainly a birding trip. Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy's saying possible sightings of northern lights.
No. And there's a good reason, because there's no night. If you went there in September, I would say the chances are pretty good, or October, but there's no darkness. It's not dark enough. So sadly, no northern lights. It's far enough north, wrong time of year.
And then Richard here is asking, what are the chances of seeing several of the northern owl species? I know birders who have gone up there and seen very few.
Well, I showed pictures of 7 species, which we see. 6 species we always get, and the seventh is the snowy owl, which is a bit hit and miss. But you can find it, and we have found it. But the 6 species are pretty much guaranteed, and the reason is that they have nest boxes. There's a very good system in Finland. There's this organization that has got about 500 nest boxes which they put out, and then every year what they do is they go around in the early part of the season and they monitor these boxes and find out which ones of them are occupied, and then they select 1 or 2 occupied ones that have access, easy access, that they can take groups to. And then they'll let you go to visit these birds at their nest sites, and you do it without disturbing the birds, or indeed the fact that most of the birds don't get any visitors, and then 1 or 2 pairs, the unlucky ones, will get a lot of visitors, but visitors who behave responsibly.
Yeah.
So yeah, the owls are pretty much guaranteed. They're fabulous. Yeah.
Last two comments here. Patricia saying she saw Ortulung bunting near Oulu in 2019, sitting on the fence post. Oh, that must have been amazing to see. Thank you for sharing. And then Timothy saying, thanks for the great presentation. Do we also offer extensions to see and have mammal viewing, especially wolverines?
Well, let me have a word with Keith about that, and later on. I'd love to see wolverine. I've never seen one myself. Yes, they can be seen. You have to do different things to see it from what we do. You can also see brown bears, and indeed in the photograph where I showed you where we're at the Russian border, that's the area where you can see bears and wolverines, and they've got hides. You can go and see these things, but you've got to make a special effort to do so. You'd need to have 2 or 3 extra days, I think, to do it, and I'm not even sure what the best time of year is, but it could be done. We haven't done it as yet, but it might be something we can offer. And in terms of extension, the only official extension is Iceland, which is we offer Iceland as an extra tour, which you can go to immediately after the Finland Norway trip. So that's the only true extension as at present.
Absolutely. And Timothy, this sounds like a great tailor-made department tour that we could possibly custom build for you. So
yes,
if you're interested, just chat to us on info.
That would be great.
Rockjumper.com.
Yeah.
And very last
that
one.
Would be great.
Very last one. Ricky's just slipped in, and I love this question. I've heard of twitching and twitches, but what is a twitch?
What is a twitch?
A twitch.
It's when you go to see a rare bird. So you hear about a rare bird, and then you go to see it. You've got to travel, sometimes only a short distance, sometimes a long distance, but you go to see a rare bird that somebody else has found. Oh, and a twitcher is someone who does that. So most bird watchers can be twitchers at times, but not all bird watchers are twitchers. So, and the word comes from there was an English chap who in the 50s, well, there several of them, and they were keen on seeing rare birds. And this chap, I've forgotten his name. Anyway, they used to go on a motorbike to see these rare birds, and when they got there, the chap on the back of the motorbike used to suffer from the cold, and he would sort of often start shaking because of the cold, and that is how that's how the term came about. So yeah, it was named after this person who got so cold that he started shaking.
Oh, that's great. That is so. And sorry, Brian's also just squeaked in a last question here. Roughly how many species, I promise this will be the last one, roughly how many species would it be possible to see on the Iceland extension? that we would not get in Finland, Norway?
Oh, what? That you wouldn't get? Oh, not very many. It's a handful of species that you extra species that you get. You would get, well, it's probably better chances of Gyr Falcon. The real classic Iceland species are Barrow's goldeneye and harlequin duck, and they're easy. More auk colonies, good possibility of getting little auk in addition to all the other auks, and Brunnick's guillemots, a lot more of those, and also grey phalarope, possibility of grey phalarope. So not very many extra species. Spectacular scenery, of course, in Iceland, all those geysers and things like that. But Barrow's goldeneye and harlequin duck are the two big ones to get, and better chances of Gyr Falcon.
Great, Nigel. Thank you so much. And what is your book, your favorite bird book for this region?
Oh well, it's Europe, so it's the Collins Bird Guide. Everything's in that. There are other books, but that is the best one.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We love this time that we spend with you. So from all of us from the Rockjumper team, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.